Okay, so Rabbi is talking here about this whole thing here is how we have to relate to a tzaddik. So we'll begin the story section. It's a famous, it's just like this, the beginning of the Enlightenment movement. Enlightenment that came from, right? Enlightenment came from Germany, that scholar, that from which the Reform movement essentially is that in the conservative movement. So the Fum Rabbonim fought against this. This was the most, and still it's petered out already, but the effects have been devastating. The greatest threat to Yiddishkeit ever. So in the war against the Reform movement, the ones that led the battle were the Chassidic Rebbes. We're not going into detail now. Actually, initially, the Gedolah Misnagdim, and I'm talking the greatest, fell prey to the Haskalah. The Haskalah, they were very, very clever. And how did they begin their whole inroads into the yeshivas? They started with an emphasis on grammar, Dikta Kapitoira, and language, and Pshutisha Mikra, and the books were written, and they got haskamas from the Gedolah Misnagdim. But the Baal started with Baal Shem Tov already, and Alter Rebbe, and later on saw through them immediately, and that this was kfira mamish, and all-out war against them. But unfortunately, this is just a fact. They got this stamp of approval and infiltrated the yeshivas through the leadership of the Misnagdim. That's the hard reality, and the details of that you can see yourself if you study the history. So the main war, eventually they all realized it was all, everybody joined forces. That came much later, time at Chassidic already, that the Misnagdim joined with the Chassidim fighting against the Reform. At the beginning, they were seduced by it. So the Ikim L'chama was by the Chassidic Rebbes. And that's why the Maskilim, they called themselves the enlightened ones, sought for ways to make fun of the Chassidic Rebbes, because the Chassidic Rebbes were at the forefront of battling them. On one occasion, one of the Maskilim said to a Chassid Tzemach Tzedek, talking to him, and he's speaking very derogatively about the Rebbes. And he said, this whole idea of giving kvitlach, and in general, the way the Rebbes conduct themselves, they're all on an ego trip, these Rebbes, and it's all about the type of covet and money, right? It's an easy target because the Rebbe has this exalted position and people giving kvitlach and giving money, and then he's making fun of the whole thing. In his mind, exposing it, it's all a sham and a fake. So the Chassid says to him, listen to me. He says to the big maskal, the big enlightened Jew, so I said like this. You should know, in those days, life was different. So today, the Biel is saying, the abundance of material wealth that we have and material things didn't exist. People used to buy meat only for Shabbos. And they bought a small piece. In those days, also, Rabbi is telling the listeners they weren't faucets and running water like we have today. So water was also at a premium. So the Chassid, now back to the story, what the Chassid says to the Maskal, to these free thinkers they called themselves, that were enlightened. He said there was a certain family in the village, a villager. His custom was that every Motzei Shabbos, so they would wash out the fleishik pot with water that they drew from the well. And this water was fatty. And they used to keep it to the next morning, didn't pour it out. The water they cleaned their pot, they cooked they roasted the meat. what would they do with the water? Sunday morning, they would give it to the cow, to the cow. They had one cow. And she was in the chutzner, in the courtyard. So this cow was used to every Sunday having geschmack of water. It was a tasty water because that fat in it, the residual. And each week the cow waited for Sunday to get its delight, the water, the fatty water. Happened once, one Motzei Shabbos, by mistake, someone tipped over the bucket that had the fatty water from cleaning the pot. So the next day, they bring the cow to drink Sunday morning regular water. The cow's very angry. What happened to my Sunday treat? So the cow thinks, I know. Someone is jealous in the house that I get this water, and they drank it, this special water. And the balabas, he drank it, and he's not giving it to me. So end of story. So the Chassid says to the maskell, it's understood that for people, such water is it's disgusting. It's refuge. It's lichluch. People are not only not jealous of the cow, but they would never drink it. They wouldn't even touch it. But the cow, in her mind, this was the ultimate pleasure, and she doesn't get it. Must be he took it. And so the Chassid concludes, and he says to the maskell, he says, he said in a nice way that you're like the cow that's looking at the tzaddik, and the tzaddik is taking the kvitlach and the money, and you're judging him on your standard. So you should know the way you're looking at him is the way the cow looks at the balabas. Tzaddik operates in a whole different level, etc. Okay, we'll stop here. And Be'ez Hashem tomorrow, the new Maimer.